Good morning. How is everybody doing this morning? Please send me some comments, some likes. Let me know you're out there because sometimes these things don't always work out as planned. So, how is everybody doing on at least here? It's a beautiful day. The heat is broken and it's a great day. I can't wait to go do some agility after I'm done with this. Um, as always, during our Facebook Live, please feel free to ask questions in the comments. I will try to stop um, during the Facebook Live and answer your questions. If not, I will finish them off at the end. Also, if you're listening to the recording, that's great. Thank you. And I will regularly check back and answer the questions you ask. For those of you on the call, say hello. Let me know where you're from, what kind of dog you have, your favorite thing about your dog. Send pictures if you like. I always like seeing your dogs. While we give people a couple of minutes to join us, I'm going to talk about something that came up a couple of times this week during my lessons. Good morning, Tammy. Always remember that you are reinforcing what happens when you pull the cookie out of your pocket, when you pull the cookie out of the bag. Only ever work the dog you want. That means if your dog's jumping at you and you pull out cookies and say sit, you are rewarding the jumping at you. And I hear this a lot. Oh, I can't use food. My dog's a complete idiot when I use food. That's because you reinforced that behavior. Some of you may just be starting out with using food, and I'm so happy you've come to the positive side of dog training, but this could be a real problem. You're like, I don't want, the two things that happen is my dog's an idiot when there's food, and then the other thing is, oh, am I going to be stuck using food for the rest of my life? You know what? Yes, you are going to reward your dog for the rest of your life for some stuff. But there's a billion things you do that reward your dog, not just food. Food is a really handy tool to use when training behaviors. Do I still reward my adult trained dogs? Yes. But you also have to remember my dogs are never fully trained. There's always something more you can work on. Good morning, Roxanne. Cheryl, very nice to see you. How is Holden doing? Martina, I hope I'm saying that right. You have, Tammy, you have a 9-week-old lab. Yes, lunging and biting. A lot of the exercises we're going to talk about today are going to help you with that. Labs are wonderful, great, happy-go-lucky, not fearful dogs generally, but they're definitely what we're going to talk about today, which is frustration because they're so excited to see everything. Okay, back to my little blurb at the beginning. I keep saying this, and I'm hoping if I keep saying it, people will hear it more, because I know sometimes you don't process what I'm saying. Your dog is a reflection of what you've reinforced. So, for example, your 9-week-old puppy, he is lunging and biting because that is how he thinks he's supposed to interact. So our goal is to help you teach him how to interact in different ways so he's funner to be with. Because right now I know you want to hug him and touch him and squeeze him because he's a little lab. And every time you do that, he becomes piranha boy, and then you end up frustrated. He ends up frustrated, which makes him more bitey. So my example I wanted to use today is dogs that beg or don't beg at the table. I hear a lot, oh, I don't want to feed him people food because then he'll beg. Yeah, your dog knows a steak is a steak. You don't have to feed him a steak for him to go, oh yeah, it's a steak. What creates a dog that begs at the table or doesn't beg at the table is what you do with that behavior. So for example, if your dog comes over, let's say your 9-week-old puppy comes over and starts jumping at your chair when you're eating dinner, and you're like, cut it out, cut it out, cut it out. You are reinforcing that behavior. Kind of almost impossible to not reinforce that behavior. So this is where I put some management. When a dog starts to live with me, we eat dinner sitting in front of the TV on TV trays. So it's really easy for a dog to knock it over or to jump on there coming off a couch or off the ottoman. So I start working on this from the day they come home. They start in a crate in the living room with us, so they get used to seeing us eating and learning they have to go and amuse themselves. And this is where Wicket, my 4-month-old border collie puppy, is at the moment. Then I start letting them out of the crate, but they have a leash attached. It's either tied to something or it's under my foot. And I reward her for sitting there calmly. And at first it was hard, and I might do it for 5 minutes, or I might do it after I'm done dinner, but my food's still sitting there just so she gets the concept, but I can pay more attention. And then now she's getting better at it. She sits there quietly on the ottoman, and then she'll go off and play with her toys. And then she comes back and sits on the ottoman quietly. And then the next stage will be I only reward her if she's not looking at me, because I don't want to create a dog who stares at me intently while I eat dinner. So that's just an example of thinking about it. If your dog has obnoxious behaviors around food, think about how you are reinforcing them. And that's how you create the behavior you want of, in this case, go lie down on a bed and chew a toy or amuse yourself while I eat dinner. You're not going to get the food off my plate unless I choose to give it to you. And then I might have something I don't want on my plate. And if my dog's lying there quietly chewing on a toy, I go throw it at him. That's perfect. But if he comes over and asks for it and then I reward him, that might not be what I'm looking for. You just have to figure out what works for your family. Okay, Holden is perfect. Cheryl, that's lovely. Yeah, Holden is the perfect golden who wants everybody to touch him. Good morning, Rochelle. I'm saying hi back to Farley. Martina, you have a 1-year-old Sheltie. Yes, this talk today is going to totally help you. Shelties are barky. They're barky dogs. There's a lot of breeds that are just naturally barky. So they're much more likely to have this frustration behavior than breeds that aren't. Okay, so hopefully everybody who's joining us has had an opportunity to get on, and I'm going to start on today's topic. So this morning I'm talking about leash reactivity. This is a part 2 of a 3-part series. Last week I spoke about what reactivity is and how to prevent it, and I will put the link to that in the comments somewhere. Very broadly, leash reactivity can be kind of split into 2 things: fear-based or frustration-based. So frustration is what you guys are talking about, that overly friendly, overly excited dog who wants to say hello to everybody and needs to understand self-control. Fear-based is more when things get too close, I want them to go away, so I'm going to lunge and bark, and hopefully that will work. Today we're going to talk about the frustration. So frustration reactivity comes down to this: a dog that has no understanding of self-control. As soon as my puppy or an adult dog that enters my house, I start working them understanding that they can't have everything they want. This is part of their life. And I had a client yesterday, her dog has started lunging at other dogs. But then we talked about her dog's rarely on leash. We live out in the country. She comes to agility, the dog's on leash, and that's where he's lunging. But we started talking about how many times did your dog not get what he wants? You know, if your dog's relatively well behaved and you live in the country and you don't walk him in town a lot, he's off leash. So he's pretty well does what he wants most of the time. So when all of a sudden he's faced with an opportunity where he has to make a choice, he doesn't understand how to make the correct choice. And that's what we're going to work on. If you start building this behavior right from the beginning, the concept's easy for them to understand. So they're still going to try, especially if they're babies. They're still going to go, what if I do this? But the minute you stop them, they're like, oh yeah, I remember I have to be calm to get what I want. And that doesn't mean they always get what they want, but now you have a calm dog that can hear you and make choices. So let me give you an example. I do a puppy program where I help people raise their puppies. And the second lesson, I always start with some sort of control work. Usually we're doing socializing, so we meet in a parking lot, and the skill I work on is coming out of the car calmly. My goal in life is your dog is sitting in the car, you open the door, you can put his leash on, you can get a hold of his leash, and regardless what's going on in the environment, your dog does not come out until released. And this easily transfers to the crate, to the car, to the tent, to the camper, to whatever place you have doorways that your dog can learn to not go through. Does this mean my dog has to do this at every door in my house? No, absolutely not. In fact, not even every exit door. We do it at the back door that we use regularly, but the front door, we don't do it. But If my dog started driving through the front door or being obnoxious at the front door, I would put that back into play right away. So yeah, it's a safety thing in a car. There's nothing scarier than a dog running around a parking lot that you can't catch. That terrifies me. So it's really important in the car. And it also teaches the dog releases. And what I mean by that is permission. A lot of times we're telling the dog, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Telling your dog when something is available has to be part of the training. It clears up for the dog what is available and what isn't. Picture people coming in your front door and your dog's excited and you're holding onto the collar and your dog's lunging and excited. And then once the person's in and you close the door, you let him go. You're teaching them, keep trying. Sooner or later, I will let you go. But if instead you stand there, now this might take a while, and I'm not saying try this, we're going to do some steps before this, but you stand there, hold his collar, and wait till he calms down. And when he's calm, and that doesn't have to be sitting, but it does have to be calm, you then release him. You are reinforcing calm behavior. Always have to remember that. How am I reinforcing this? Like all skills I teach, I'm not correcting the incorrect behavior. I am building value for the correct behavior. So I'm not yelling at him for barking and lunging, though I probably wouldn't put him in that situation. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But I am just calmly giving him an opportunity to give me the behavior I want, which is calm, wait to be released. If you start this when they're young, it's easy because they just don't get that excited when they're 8 weeks old. As they get older and you practice releasing them when they're excited, they do this more and more and more. In the comments, I'll show you a video of Wicca working on coming out of the crate calmly. So she has to sit she has to sit when I touch the door of the crate. And I expect to open the door and she waits to be told break, which is my release word, before she's allowed out. Basically, she was doing this since 2 days after I got her. So she understands this is my first step of self-control. By the way, I have a puppy Facebook group called Raising a Puppy in a Pandemic, and there's a pile of free videos for you to watch and learn on there. So please join us. I will put the comments in the links. Okay, so I get it. You get this puppy and he wants to see everything and you want to let him go smell the flower, let him do whatever he wants. It's like, I remember my son's grandparents, whatever the little boy wants, he gets because we're the grandparents. We don't have to put rules. That's how people are kind of with their puppies. The puppy wants to sniff that flower, sure, no problem. They follow the dog over on a tight leash. As the dog gets older, the pulling gets worse. Now it's uncomfortable for the handler and the dog, and then eventually it becomes almost dangerous, or with some dogs, it will become dangerous. This is when I see people get anti-pulling devices, halties, gentle leaders, easy walk harness, jaywalk harness, prong collars. The problem is, until you stop the pulling mindset, the concept of I can have what I want when I'm on leash, and if I don't get it right away, I just keep pulling harder and then possibly lunge. Until you change that mindset, most of those anti-pulling devices stop working within approximately a month as they get used to the pain and just continue to pull and go back to your habits and their habits, because you're allowing the pulling and they're taking full advantage of it. Today, I'm going to walk you through the first steps that I work on with my clients to start to change this. The steps are extremely similar between fear or frustration reactivity. The biggest difference is you have to understand your dog's mindset so that your responses are appropriate to build the behavior you want. Think of it like a game of tennis. There's a back and forth conversation going on between the players. You hit the ball, your dog gives you an answer. Or you ask the dog a question. The dog hits the ball back, your dog gives you an answer. You hit the ball, response to that answer. It's always back and forth. So make sure, the hard part is making sure you're answering the dog's questions, not, and I get it, I do it too, not just getting frustrated, because then neither of you are learning. So the first step is changing the reaction to the cue. By the cue, I mean something, for example, the word sit, that triggers a behavior to happen. The dog, you say sit, the dog puts his bum on the ground. For this behavior, for this example, I'm going to use a squirrel. So the cue is the sight of the squirrel, and the response is crazy. What happens with your dog's brain when he sees a squirrel? Does he lose it? Barking, lunging, screaming, hard to hold on to? I always picture this as the brain falling out of the head. When the dog sees a squirrel, the brain pulls out of the head and goes to the squirrel. Your dog is no longer in control of his body. His brain is fully on the squirrel. To have any sort of success, you need a dog that is operant, meaning able to engage his brain and therefore able to control himself. The goal for success is to keep your dog's brain in his head. When I teach a new skill, I usually start away from the problem. So I don't walk to the squirrel tree and say, today we're going to learn. I'm going to start it somewhere with very low distraction where the dog is 100% comfortable, especially if I'm working with a fearful dog. Somewhere like your kitchen or your bedroom. Put your hand in your dog's collar and you're going to show him a cookie. Make sure the cookie is non-crumbly, big enough that your dog can easily see it, and on floor that he can easily see it. So if I'm on hardwood, I wouldn't use a treat the same color of hardwood. I would use a treat that's a different color. I want him to see the cookie, not have to search for it. So you have your hand in your dog's collar, and don't worry, I'm going to show you a video of this in the comments. You have your hand in your dog's collar and you toss a cookie a foot in front of him. Now you wait. Some dogs, most dogs are, if you've never played this, are going to dive, lunge, wiggle. They just are going to do all sorts of body stuff, and you're just going to stand there. And when your dog finally settles down, you're going to say, get it, and open your hand and let him get the cookie. This is starting to work on, if you want that cookie, you have to calm down. It's the first step. I know you're thinking, why would I teach my dog to get something to prevent him from losing his mind over the squirrel? I love the Get It game because it teaches skills and concepts that I think every dog needs. And it's now incorporated into most of my training programs. And I'm gonna give you an opportunity to get a handout that details the game even more at the end. So first skill it teaches, keeping the brain in the head. I want your dog to looking at the cookie, but staying calm. If he is, again, barking, lunging, any of those things, you just wait. Because you're prepared and you've got full 4 fingers in that collar, you can do this with pretty well any size dog because you're prepared and holding them. What I want you to make sure is you never release to the cookie until your dog is looking at the cookie. With some dogs, they'll calm themselves down, but they need to look away from the cookie to do it. And that's exactly what happens out in public. I cannot look at something and stay calm, but I can't look at something and stay calm. And that's the difference. So the skill I'm trying to teach is look at the squirrel. Just don't lose your mind. That's it. Okay, so releases. The get it is a very clear, controllable release, and your dog understands that means I can get the cookie. So stop trying because you're rewarding calm, but the release gives you clear information. Most dogs are very confused on what's available and when it's available because we're not clear on what's available. It's when it's available. For example, you're walking down the street, your dog pulls towards a person. You're like, no, 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 not allowed. Now you're walking down the street and your neighbor comes down the driveway and says hello, and you allow your dog to pull towards the neighbor and say hello. Your dog's like, so what's the criteria? When do I get to pull? When do I not get to pull? Well, they're going to default to the behavior that gets rewarded. You got hugged by the neighbor. So they're going to default to pulling. And they're always going to go, what if I pull? What if I pull? Okay. Collar holds. Most dogs that are reactive, if they're teetering on the edge and you tighten on the leash, pull back on the leash, or try to grab their collar, they explode. Something about that pushes them forward. Doing the get it game, They learn to stay calm when you grab their collar. So sometimes just a physical touch, just touching their collar, pulls their brain back into their head, which is what you want. And if they don't, if the brain is still completely gone, which happens, then you now have a hold of the dog and can easily move them away. I'll give you an example. I had a Siberian Husky, Max. At the off-leash park, Max was always third man on a fight. So if any two dogs started to fight, his favorite thing in the world was to run around screaming and bite at their butts. Luckily, he had a pretty good recall and his collar grab concept was great. So the minute I heard the grumbling of a fight, I would call him and take a hold of his collar. As soon as I had his collar, he knew to sit quietly next to me. Didn't matter what was going on in front of him, he understood it meant sit quietly next to me and wait till I release you. So for him, the collar grab right away brought the brain back into his head and calmed him down. When working with a reactive dog, you need to push the line. You are constantly exposing them to new and more challenging distractions or things that can make them react. This is called threshold, and we'll talk about that more in a different live, but you're constantly pushing the line of the threshold, what they can handle. If you never push and always play it safe, that's great, and your dog won't react, but you're also not going to get better. And if your goal is to have a dog that you can eventually walk down the street and can walk by the squirrel tree, walk by a dog, walk by a cat, you need to start pushing. Unfortunately, when you push, sometimes you push too far. The collar grab is going to be the key to solve that. The second your dog starts to react, long before he's in full reaction mode, as soon as you know your dog, you will learn, playing this game, you will learn to read your dog. As soon as he starts to go too far, you just take him by the collar. And like I said above, he's either gonna right away settle down because you touched him, and as soon as you touch him, you bring his brain back into his body, or now you have the collar and you can easily turn him away from whatever it is and add some distance, which is usually all they need. They just need to add some distance, and then right away I present the distraction again and go, can you do it now? And if he's like, yes, awesome, that gets rewarded. If he's like, no, no problem, we move away. Okay. Excuse me. When you and your dog are comfortable with the initial stages of the get it game. Oh, before I keep going, does anybody have any questions on the get it game? Does this make sense? I'm going to give you the next step and show you how you put it into real life. I'll give you a second. Okay, no questions. I'll keep going. When you and your dog are comfortable with the initial stages of the get it game, you are ready to move forward. The next step would be to take it out in public. Expose your dog to whatever it is you're working on. So let's say we're working on squirrels. First, I find a squirrel tree. They are everywhere. One of the trees in my front yard used to be one where if you stood there and looked at it for 2 minutes, there would be squirrels running up and down it. Find a squirrel tree. You probably know where they are already because that's where your dog loses his mind on your walk. This is where you're going to change things up a bit. You obviously can't release your dog to when he's calm. You can't let him go play with the squirrels. So instead, the minute he focuses on the squirrel, you're going to put a cookie in his mouth. When you're doing this, you need super high value treats. Frozen meatballs, cheese, pieces of meat, hot dogs. You want to keep the rewards large, obviously keeping in mind the size of the dog. You don't want to go huge rewards in a Chihuahua, but you want something that they're gonna chew, and you want something that it's easy for you to manipulate because it gets all very exciting and you got to get the food out quick. Set yourself up far enough away that this is going to be challenging for your dog, but not blow his brain. Constant failure, which is what a lot of us end up doing, constant failure is just teaching your dog, this is how I behave when I see a squirrel. You need successes. You're better off to start too far and then keep moving forward than to start too close and have it all go to crap. The first time you try something like this, you need to get, I want you to have success to build both your and your dog's confidence. So let's say we're going to start 100 feet away from the squirrel tree. Now here's the hard part. I need you to watch your dog. when I do this with clients, the hardest part is getting them to watch their dog instead of watching the distractions, the person, the tree, whatever. Watch your dog. Um, so now you're ready. You're ready to watch your dog. Your hand is in the collar. You have cookies in the other hand. I would still have a leash on the dog, and I would still also be holding the leash on the hand holding the collar. Now you wait. You wait for your dog to find the squirrel and focus. If he just focuses on the tree, you're working on just the tree. You will recognize the look. It's the same look he had when he was looking at the cookie on the floor. Usually they shut their mouths, their ears point forward, they kind of lean in a little bit. That's the look that I'm 100% focused on whatever that is. Soon as you see that, put a cookie in your dog's mouth. Some dogs are like, I'm so focused, I can't even see the cookie. For those dogs, I take the cookie and I kind of push it in between their lips. All of a sudden you'll see them, it'll go in and then they'll be like, oh, I can chew. Dogs have big gaps in their molars, so it's easy to just shove a cookie in. All of a sudden they'll be like, oh, there's food in my mouth, I need to chew. The simple act of chewing will start to pull their brain off the squirrel tree. So they're going, oh, okay, I can watch the squirrel tree, but I can chew. Right away, their focus on the squirrel tree has dropped. You're going to feed 5 treats this way. Not all at once, one at a time. So reward, reward, reward. And then you're going to pause and you're going to assess. Most dogs after 5 rewards are going to start to settle down. You'll see it. It's I'll see if I can find you some video, but you'll see it. The dog will start to come down a notch. His body will start to relax. The intensity will start to decrease. So if you're there, then you'll also start to see them as your hand approaches with the cookie. They'll start to do this. They'll turn away and be like, oh yeah, you're bringing a cookie. If you're there, do another 5 treats, but slow them down. If your dog is still just as intense as it was for the first 5 treats, then keep going, do another 5. If your dog has started to go, wait, you have food? Which a lot do. It always amazes me how quickly they're like, oh, there's cookies? What happens is when you have a reactive dog, um, we get stuck into that vicious yelling at them circle. So the minute you get near the tree or near the person or near the other dog, you start holding your dog back and you start, don't do it, don't do it, and yelling at them or trying to feed them, but they're not taking food. It becomes a vicious circle, right? And everybody gets very excited and very frustrated. They have never just been rewarded. So as soon as you give them food, they're like, oh, I get to look at the squirrels and I get cookies. They totally are like, oh, this is wonderful. Trust me, it works. So yeah, if they're starting to turn back to you, then I want you to ask for a behavior, a simple, easy behavior for the dog. Come, take a step back, reward them, sit, couple of cookies, break, and let them go back to watching the squirrels. So now if you're there, I start to let go of the collar and just use the leash. And this will be next week's game, which is the ODR game, the observe, don't react game. So it's once you can do it with the collar, now you start giving them a little leash freedom and seeing if they can still do it. I've worked with so many dogs whose owners were like, my dog is never going to look away from that squirrel. And I don't think I've ever worked with a dog that eventually, sometimes it took 20 treats, but all of them with under 10 minutes eventually started to decrease their focus on whatever it was. One dog, it was the neighbor. But by 20 treats, he was like, wait a minute, cookies? So yeah, this works. It's worked every time, and it's that foot in the door you need to start further training. To make this work, you have to stop it from happening. So the first step is you can't go out and do this and then the next day walk by the squirrel tree and go back to your old behaviors. You have to decide if you're going to change reactivity. The first step is I'm not going to walk you, or I'm not going to walk you there, or you got to figure something out. because if you continue to do the same thing, it doesn't matter how much training you are, the habit is going to stay. Um, okay, anybody have any questions? No questions? That was a lot of information. Like I said earlier, I am going to include a free handout that you can get that details the Get It game. Before I end this presentation, I want to leave you with this. I'm talking about leash reactivity and telling you how to fix it, but if you've got a really big dog or a dog who's so lost it that they can't control themselves, this is now a dangerous behavior. You could end up seriously injured or worse, someone else. I have seen it happen where dogs get out of people's hands and they're so high, they've run over and bit a person, bit a child, bit another dog. Your dog is acting the best he can. How life has taught him to act to this point. Leash reactivity can be serious and will usually continue to escalate unless you can do something to change it. This is one of those dog training problems that you must get professional help with. That could be me coaching you online. That could be a local dog trainer. That could even mean sending your dog away. The bottom line is if you're experiencing severe leash reactivity, seek professional help now. Don't put it off and let it become worse. It's solvable. It's really solvable. So, 6 months from now, you can have that dog, or at least a lot closer than you are now, that you've always wanted. You can make life pleasant on walks, but you need to get help. I'm going to take a few minutes here to start talking about my reactive dog program, which I offer both in person and to students online through video courses, live chat, phone calls, video chat, and video review. So if you're interested, send me a message. We can talk about it. Our reactive dog program consists of the following: build the skills you need to be successful. Learn how to teach your dog solid skills, not just sit when you see a cookie, but actually, he can be walking across the room, you say sit, and the dog sits. Of course, Get It is one of those skills. Creating environments to practice in. I've been doing this for a long time. I have all sorts of tricks and scenarios where I plan exactly what I need to create the challenges that your dog needs. Acceptance. A big problem with having a reactive dog is accepting that you have a reactive dog and accepting what your dog can and cannot deal with. I help you through that. I have been blessed with multiple reactive dogs, which has given me a lot of information to be able to help my clients. And I know it's hard. You're like, but I don't want this dog. I don't want, not that you don't want your dog, but you don't want the dog that's reactive. So you end up not going out or avoiding situations or not interacting as much because you're like, this isn't the dog I want. It's embarrassing. It's just not what I signed up for. Building confidence for you and your dog. Teaching you how to deal with the real world. It's not always going to be perfect. You are going to make mistakes. The dog is going to make mistakes. But if you have a plan in place on what to do when bad things happen, it's easy. You're like, oh, he reacted. Okay, let's do this. And that way you got control of the situation and don't feel you've lost control. The final step is integrating back into the real world. My goal for you, my goal for any dog I work with, is to be able to walk down the street and you not have to stress about it. I don't want to use, I don't train you to use treats your whole life. I train you to create a dog that goes, yeah, that's a squirrel, and keeps walking. No more excited than he gets when you see a fire hydrant, unless your dog pulls to a fire hydrant, or a car or a bus. It's just like, yeah, it's a squirrel, and they keep walking. That is my goal for you and for every dog I work with. We only take clients that we can help. Plain and simple. I assess the dog owner as much as the dog when it comes to applications and enrollments into our reactive dog program. We have an application process, not just open enrollment. After 20 years of getting results for reactive dogs owners as a professional dog trainer, I know that without a dedicated, hardworking, and patient dog owner, the dog half of the team doesn't stand a chance. So we make sure we can work together. We're a good team and you understand what's involved before we get started. I'm looking for owners who are tired of dealing with the reactive dog and know there is a better way. Owners who are open-minded, ready to learn new things and become better dog trainers. Owners who love their dog and want to help them be better. So if this describes you and you're ready to finally reach your goals with your dog, like take your dog camping, go for a walk in the park, go to a class, learn a dog sport, live life with your dog in harmony, just give me a shout, send me a message, send me an email, give me a call. Join us next week for the final installment of Leash Reactivity. This time we will be addressing fear reactivity. Me and my family will be off camping next week. Summer is here and the weather looks great. But the live next week will be Thursday, July 2nd at 10 a.m. Hope you can join us. For those of you who are watching who are Canadian, happy Canada Day. We will see you next week. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. If you have a request for a special topic, please feel free to put it in the comment. Have a great weekend and we will see you next week. Bye guys.